Ladies and gentlemen, episode 6 of mountain biking in South East Queensland. We've had a little bit of a break. We've had a cyclone come through the area recently, ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. But we are back in the studio and it's a full house tonight. Firstly, I just want to say g'day to Oppy and Hubcap. Thank you again for being here, and thank you again for every week you've been here. It's been an awesome chats and discussions so far. How are you going?
I'm good. Yes. Welcome back post Alfred. I think all of our trails will be very different next time we get out on them once they've dried out.
Mm-hmm. They've been closed for weeks now. We had this cyclone, had a bit of time after that. We've had a few sunny days and then more rain. So I've been sitting here for weeks waiting for the local trails to open back up. Hubcap, you been on the bike?
Not as much as I'd like to, of course. Some of the fire trails are open throughout Brisbane Forest Park and other places. And they've graded part of South Boundary Road. So South Boundary Road at the moment is a mix of just incredibly fast and smooth, just hero dirt, and then literally get off your bike and clamber over fallen trees and calf-deep mud puddles and things like that. So it's a bit of an adventure at the moment, but when it dries out, it's going to be good. South Boundary's always good. I've had bad days up there, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, and it would be a silly question to ask our guest if she's been on the bike recently.
Just a little bit.
Yes, she's been on the bike a lot, and we are so... Let's give her like a studio applause to welcome our guest. I think I've met her 8 or 9 years ago now. It's been a while. Emma Reimer has been around the scene mountain biking, and we're so happy to have you in the studio. Round of applause. Woohoo.
Thank you.
Welcome. Have you been on the bike recently?
I have been on the bike for about 49 hours, I worked out, over 8 days. Yep.
Wow. And that's the Cape Epic?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we were all very excited to get you. I think this came up a long time ago before, even when we knew you were going to be riding the event. But before we get into that, I think it's worth asking you this question we love asking our guests. And that is, when did you first pick up a mountain bike?
I first picked up a mountain bike 10 years ago, and I was a school teacher on Year 9 camp, and it was one of the activities on the camp. And that was the first time I'd even heard that mountain biking was a thing. Yep.
I think that's a little different to everyone else in the room who got into mountain biking. I think I was around 20 or something. Hubcap, you're similar?
20-ish.
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
41.
41. There you go.
You just have to be that little bit cooler, don't you, Oppy?
I'm just old.
And so you must have a very different story of, you kind of took to it straight away, right?
I wanted to take to it straight away. It actually took me 9 months to get on a bike. So the camp was at Easter. I was determined that I was going to be a mountain biker from that one ride, but it took me until Christmas to actually get on a bike.
Yeah.
And
We had to wait for Santa Claus.
Well, I did, but not for me. One of my colleagues was getting a new bike for Christmas, and he'd got sick of me talking about how I was going to be a mountain biker, and he gave me his bike on long-term loan. And that was how I then got started, not on trails yet, but on the quiet little back streets in Toowoomba, learning how to turn in a circle and change gears and ride off a curb and all those really, really basic things, because I not only hadn't mountain biked, but I really hadn't ridden a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead a little bit as we've got a few other questions first, but it just makes me think, when you watch young kids jump on a bike, they're kind of unbreakable in a way. They break, but they mend quicker, and they haven't learned the fears, I think, that you might learn if you come into a sport, any sport, later on.
The main thing is that I'm incredibly envious of just how quickly they pick it up. Like, I say that I've been riding for 10 years, and to me that's still relatively new, and I'm nowhere near where I would like to be. But if you think of someone who starts at 7 or 8 and them riding for 10 years, I mean, they can be an international rider in that time, and their skills and their innate ability from doing it from so young is phenomenal.
I'm going to say there's probably other things you bring to the table, though, having, years under your belt when you start something later in life. There's probably some other benefits of that when it comes to, because endurance racing is a lot of older people do the endurance racing and have that tough mentality to push through. So it's probably,
Stubborn.
Did you find that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Slow but stubborn. That's how I describe myself. Yep.
Yeah.
Relentless.
Determined.
Indomitable.
Yeah. I think I first would have seen you around Hidden Vale. What were some of your first events?
Hidden Vale was very early. I think the Epic, but the 25K version on the Saturday was probably my first race. And it was a wet year and they actually shortened it to 11K. And we had fun, but after that we said, well, no, we're not coming to do the 25K. We'll come to do the 50K. And we did that for a few years, my husband and I. And then, the 4 hour, at the 4 hour watching the 24-hour riders just going, they're still going, and when we went home that night going, they're still going. And when we got up and had breakfast, they're still going. And then, it only took a couple of years and then I was out there with them, and I think wrote a blog for you for my very first 24.
I was going to say, I've read passionately some of your posts about your events, and you've done some writing for the Element blog.
Yes.
We were shooting all the Hidden Vale events, and happy to get your thoughts, because was it it must have been your first 24-hour that you wrote? Yeah, for us. So the year you started out at Hidden Vale riding there?
The exact year I'm not sure, but probably about 7 years ago.
Yeah, and have you come across these fellas along the way?
At just a few events, yes.
Yeah, these guys are very heavy, and I think I've got the most photos of these guys than anyone. And then now, given the amount of laps you do at the 24 hours, now you're up there with the number of photos, and you're a happy customer. Thank you for your purchasing of photos.
Yes, I enjoy supporting, and actually was reading some of my Facebook memories and came up, and it was during the COVID years when you weren't able to get out to events, and there was a post that I'd done with some of my photos from your events. That just made me think, going back. But always happy to support, because I love the photos and you've got to have the support to keep them going.
Yeah. Let's talk about, since we're talking about racing, what drives us, all of you guys. You've all done some pretty long distance racing. What's the drive when it comes to achieving a long distance event and your goal setting? And we've talked a little bit about goal setting. We've also talked about sometimes your placing doesn't really reflect how good of a ride you had. But let's throw it out there. What do you guys have to say about long distance endurance events? What's your passion or your drive?
The older I get, the slower I go, but I can go for longer.
Your first real serious ultra distance or sort of long distance event was the rail trail end to end. Well, starting in Esk, like Esk to Wakarakati Araman to Esk in the wet.
Yeah.
That night, that was your first. I think you were telling me about.
The real. But behind that was the self challenge of, very early on, I remember going, I've never done 100 Ks. That seems like a really high benchmark, and setting that as a goal. And before the first end-to-end, I'd never ridden 160 Ks in a day. And that was part of the journey. And it was like, well, I've done that. What's next? And it was like, well, the double, and I didn't know I could do it. So it was a real personal journey for achievement, rather than being like, setting a result. It was about completion. So that was a mindset. And I've done one 24-hour in a team, and it was a social team, and I'm a competitive rider. It was Hidden Vale, and it was interesting because I went out hard, the next rider went out hard, and then the third rider took double our lap time to do one lap, and I was like, it's not one of those teams. It's and so I remember being woken up to do another lap at 3 a.m. and like, hey man, I'll just sleep and do my next one in the morning. Don't worry about it. So I've only ever done one. That was it. 24s. Maybe it's on my to-do list to do a solo 24 at some stage. I know I can do it. I've done the end-to-end double. So, but that was 21 hours. So the first year. So 24 still yet to knock over a 24 solo.
Oh, let's put that on the whiteboard.
Yeah. Is there a Hidden Vale 24-hour this year?
No.
I was thinking about that recently. I'm trying to.
Are there any 24 hours?
Well, Grelbin took it up last year, and I'd love.
I think they've got a 4. Anyhow, watch this space.
Watch this space.
Not aware of one here, because normally it's around Easter, so it's the April school holidays. But there is the Rocky Trail Jet Black in November.
I think that's our nearest one. Is that
Not-
Rydell or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So not quite South East Queensland, but I think that is
Just-
our closest.
Just over the border down Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, 24 hours are kind of post-peak. They were huge. They were like 4 in a year or more, and now they're kind of like not even one this year in the South East Queensland region.
Yeah, the Hidden Vale one's been iconic, and as far as the photos we take, they light up the plane out on the course and the bridge, which is in the photo over there. The Emma on the bridge. It's always a really fun one, and I love shooting at night because there's not that many opportunities to do night mountain bike shots, and you can get a little bit funky with it with the light streaks and smoke machines around the plane, and yeah. So I love it for that reason.
Well, you never know. It might come back in the future. It's got where there's demand, there'll be events.
Yes.
But enough about the photography. Did you answer, going back to my question of what drives you?
I did not.
So what drives you?
I think this goes a long way back to running, well, not being a runner and then getting involved in track and field and cross country running at high school. And I was always just not naturally better. I was worse at shorter distances than I was at longer distances. And I think part of that was, number one, less people are willing to go and run a 5,000 metres in the heat at QE2 and steeplechase and things like that. They're just harder events. So you have to have that sort of belligerent kind of mindset to even get to the start line. And I just seem to, I wouldn't say thrive.
Have a belligerent mindset?
Yes, potentially that. And that's just translated. My first ever mountain bike race was the first point-to-point epic. So my entry into mountain bike racing was 112 kilometres or whatever that first year was, over just under 9 hours. And I got whopped, and I was like, oh, maybe if I go further, these people will slow down and I'll catch back up. And yeah, that's... So I've always been drawn to those. I mean, I like to race XCO and stuff like that, but I'm not very good at it. So
We all have a niche, I think. We've often just talked about the fact that the longer it goes, the better you get. And I think that's your niche. And it's not just mental fortitude as well as fitness. You've got to have both. And I think there's a greater mental aspect to performance in endurance events.
in some ways, yes. Yeah. There's also a mental aspect of shorter events too. You've got to be willing to take more risks and push your limits without being able to test the edges of what you're able to do. Quite often at long distance events, lapped events, it'll be 3 or 4 hours in before I'm riding my fastest laps because I know I can hit that line and I can trust myself to let the bike slide a little bit there, where you can do that straight out of the gate. I can't.
I do remember, actually, speaking of short events, straight out of the gate one year at the Eildon Downhill Nationals, I went over the back of the first berm, just went super hard. The first corner was blown out. So, yeah, took the risk and just binned it.
But that's a mental thing. You've got to get yourself in the right state of mind. But anyway, we're not the guests tonight. We're
leading up to discussing your motivations.
I was going to say, for me, definitely, I severely lack any fast twitch muscle fibres, so speed is not my friend. But when you're doing something like an XC race, which I also thoroughly enjoy, so I could relate to what you're saying, you're racing the other riders. But when you're racing an endurance event, you're really just competing with yourself. And I think that changes the nature of the race and the challenges that you're facing, because everybody's out there really racing themselves rather than necessarily racing each other. So that mind shift, I think, is a big one.
So was it that 4-hour event where you were watching the 24-hour riders? Was that your first sort of itch to sort of push beyond what you were doing at the time and go further, or where did it start for you?
I think, to be honest, my first sort of inkling into that, I was that way inclined, was not even a race, but it was Ride the Range. When they had one year, they had a mountain bike version. And that was, I think, my very first mountain bike event. And I don't know how many times I crashed on it, but I had fun. I persevered. Look, my husband will tell you the gearing I was running, but it was all wrong for the climbing that we had. And I think he sort of realised that I had what you called that mental fortitude on that day. And then, from there, starting with the 4 hours and then progressing to the 6. Chicks in the Sticks was another one of those 3-hour races. And that really also made me think I like this because it wasn't so fast like the XC, and I'd done some Wild West racing by then, and that was a super introduction to racing. But the Chicks in the Sticks was almost more like seeing another rider and then sort of just working your way, and you had time to kind of like pick some people off. And I liked that approach rather than it just being quite so fast and chaotic.
Awesome.
Were you always an outdoor kid? Did you grow up as an outdoorsy person?
Yes.
Was it
Definitely not a bike person, but grew up riding horses. So started riding when I was my 7th birthday and had horses up until I sort of basically had children. And I think that was actually a really big attraction with that very first mountain bike ride, is that I was, middle-aged and looking for something for myself, as my own kids were then teenagers. And it reminded me of riding cross-country on a horse. You're riding through the bush and, in my mind at least, I was travelling fast. And, there were a lot of similarities. It was just the vehicle had changed somewhat.
Did you grow up in South East Queensland?
No. I don't know how to answer that question because I grew up all over. So I was actually born in England, then moved to Africa as a kid for 5 years, then went back to England and then grew up in Sydney while I was in high school.
Wow.
As an adult, didn't want to live in Sydney. I wanted to live in the country. So I've lived in Gunnedah, Narrabri, Dalby and then Toowoomba.
Wow. I've lived within about 15, 20 Ks of the same place I was born.
Yeah, pretty similar.
I forgot to add, and then Stanthorpe and then Brisbane. But yes.
Oh, yeah. When you've moved that many times, you kind of forget.
That's awesome. Do you still have horses?
No.
You still ride? No.
No.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit obsessive about things. And so once I start, they tend to take over, and a little bit competitive. And with the horses, I looked at getting back into them when my own children were a little bit older and I had a bit more time, but I was never just going to ride for leisure and fun. If I was going to ride, I was going to compete.
It's a commitment.
The commitment, the hours and the dollars added up, and neither of my kids really wanted to get into it, so it would have been me doing it, and that just wasn't feasible.
So the Iron Horse.
Yeah. So yes, these ones I can leave in the garage.
I like the word obsessive you used there, obsessive or obsession. That's
You've had such an interesting journey in mountain biking, especially taking it up as an adult.
Yes.
Do you think now that you've got further in your journey, are you ticking off goals? Have you got a further goal?
I've always got further goals. Yes, definitely much further than I ever thought. I imagined it was just going to be something I do for fun and leisure, but that obsessive streak came out. But I'm always striving to be good. But my definition of good is constantly changing.
It's a shifting baseline, yes.
So I will never get there.
Oh, I think that's a very harsh critic. You've got there. By any metric, you are a good mountain bike rider. You've just completed one of the hardest mountain bike events in the world.
Yeah.
And actually, was it your
it
your connection with living in Africa that led you to that idea? Where did the idea get planted for Cape Epic?
Pre this, it actually got planted at Port to Port in 2019. Entered the raffle to win a guaranteed entry, not realising that wasn't a paid guaranteed entry. On the last day of Port to Port, from I Ride Bikes in Toowoomba, there was a whole group and we were getting into the car. And as I got in last, everyone was saying, no, don't want to do that. Imagine the training, imagine the commitment. Nope, including my husband. I'd put an entry in for me and an entry in for him. And I got in, wouldn't it be wonderful, having our beer and our burger at the end of the last stage, and his name got called out. I think he went white, then green, then white, as he sort of like processed what he was signing up for. And I was sort of, cheering, and he just sat like a statue as he processed. And then while I was still cheering, my name got called out. And I think that was when he just went, we're in for it. So we went off to sign up and get our tickets, and then saw people in front of us getting out their credit cards to pay for the tickets. And it wasn't within our reach at the time. So we put that idea aside, and his colour slowly returned to normal. And then late last year, early this year, Jeff Moon sort of said, look, I'd be really keen to give this a shot and see if we can get some tickets. Would you be interested? And I said yes and thought, nothing will happen. And then, as I was saying to you before, it was sort of a year ago that I managed to cut my leg open and was recovering from that. I think I still wasn't able to walk at the time, let alone ride. And I got a phone call at 9 o'clock one night, and he was quite excited on the end of the phone and said, do you want to be my partner? So, yes.
And you were over the moon.
Absolutely. I was. And so was my husband, because he was not involved in trying to sort of do it either.
Yeah.
So with his full support and backing, and with, Jeff's wife's full support, because this is a major undertaking, both in terms of the training and the financial commitment, in all aspects. Yeah, we've been training for about 9 months, Jeff a little bit longer. I had to wait to heal. And then, went over. He's still over there, he and Rose, looking at wildlife and having a holiday and unwinding afterwards.
Wow.
You mentioned your injury you suffered.
Yes.
Can you talk to people? It was a significant injury, and it was something a lot of people would have taken that as their cue to give away the sport. Yeah. And you didn't just get back to riding, you've then recovered from this and trained for the biggest stage mountain bike race in the world and gone and completed it. That a lot of people don't do that.
Yes.
Can you?
Yep. So I had a silly crash. I won't say an insignificant crash, but a crash that I was otherwise completely fine from. And what we have deduced is that the way I landed, the chainring sliced open my shin. So I was literally yelling, to my coach, yep, I'm all good, no worries, not a problem. Look down, and next sentence was, can you call an ambulance? I describe it as I looked down and I saw a lamb shank instead of my leg. So yes, there was no doubt in my mind that I needed an ambulance. I couldn't put weight on it, couldn't walk, had to be carried to where the ambulance got me. And yes, unfortunately then got a fairly major infection afterwards that took quite some coming back from. So I'm very glad that I had this as a focus to sort of channel and, to look forward to something.
Because had you entered the race before you crashed?
No, but I entered the race before I was riding.
Yep.
We did talk about that, Jeff and I, and Jeff was, you'll be fine. I know you'll, and absolutely had his full support to sign.
Not only had you not done like a teaser race to get back into it, you hadn't started riding again at all.
I can't remember if I hadn't started riding at all or if I was at the point, there was a long phase where I could do flat pedal rides on a bike path with no hills. I wasn't allowed to put any pressure through my shins. So, no clipping in, no riding hills. I was allowed to do some easy, cruisy bike path rides to get back. I can't remember if I was at that point or not.
Before we get to the race itself, how did your life and your routine change once it was locked in?
Jeff had signed up with a coach from South Africa, and I signed up with the same coach so that we were on the same program. So Barry Austin was the coach. Robin de Groot is the sort of the sub coach or assistant coach who's then been doing our daily comments. So very much just following the program that he had set. Interestingly, changing from 24 training, not quite so long in the rides that we were doing, but more intensity came in. And then as we got closer, more heat training and other things. Being aware of what I was eating and very much focused, working that into the rides to see what I could handle eating, not just for one long ride, but for 8 long rides. But just making time. And I would say it wasn't, again, coming back to that family support, it wasn't only my life, but it was my husband's life as well, because a lot of things fell back onto him. I was working full time, so I'd get home from work and I'd get on the trainer or, go and drive to trails because we don't live super close to trails. And, I'd come back and he would have dinner ready and all those sorts of things. So huge
Legend.
Yeah, 100%.
Shout out Dylan.
Yes.
Shout out. Yeah.
100%.
It's a team sport, and you can see why there's so many people behind the athlete at a pro level. There's, dozens behind them.
Yeah.
So having that support. Before we haven't really spoken about what the Cape Epic is.
Yes.
So my understanding is it's riding a mountain bike marathon every day for 8 days in a row. Do you want to sort of tell people what it is?
Yes, I think that pretty well sums it up. So I think it's described as the longest mountain bike stage race in the world. It's about 600 Ks over 8 days, and I think this year was about 16,000 vertical metres. So the prologue is shorter. So that's essentially a pre-race to sort of ascertain where your starting position will be. And then, it's basically, 70 to 100 Ks with lots of climbing, up to about 2,850, but lots around the 2,000 to 2,500 metres of climbing. Every day from then on.
So for those that have done the Epic, it's like doing the Epic every day for more than a week.
Yes.
Yes. So that's that's amazing.
As a photographer, I'd be tired, I think.
Have you recovered? Are you recovered from the event yet?
I threw myself into recovery for the week afterwards. As I say, spent some time in Africa as a kid, and my cousin is still there. So he flew to Cape Town and spent a week taking me to wineries and very nice places to eat. So recovery was a week-long affair. And to be honest, yes, back on the bike and actually back into training this week, albeit, bite size a little bit smaller, taking it a bit slowly. My body feels good, but just jet lag, tiredness from jet lag and coming back.
How did the leg?
The leg is good.
Hold up.
Yep.
It went well. Can we take it back a bit?
Yeah.
When you first started mountain bike racing,
Yes.
how old would you have been your first mountain bike race? You said you picked up a bike at 41?
Yep, so 43, 44.
43, 44. So 43, 44-year-old woman coming into a very blokey, aggressive at times environment. Oppy's been racing since the invention of the bicycle. I did the first Epic in the early 2000s. We both have a long... I don't remember getting passed by many people, for example, in that first race because I was at the back the whole way. What was it like as somebody new coming into the sport so late and not fitting the main demographic, I suppose, of the people that were doing this? What was that? Talk us through that.
Okay. I think 10 years ago to now, even in that time frame, there's been a huge shift in the number of women who've taken it up and are both riding for fun and riding at events. There weren't very many women at all then, but the women who were riding, and I'm particularly thinking of some women from Toowoomba, which is where I was living at the time, and every rider, so obviously every male rider as well, was incredibly supportive. The fact that I was in, the minority gender didn't faze me at all. I just enjoyed what I was doing, and I only ever had, massive support. Rod Hickey was president of Toowoomba Mountain Bike Club at the time. He gave me, some coaching to just sort of get me very started. He was also running some kids coaching more from a fitness perspective after school, and I approached him and said, "Can I join in?" And so the kids would just leave me for dead, and I'd sort of try and follow on at the back. And by the end of it, there were sort of a few other parents joining in as well, so I wasn't the only adult with the group of 11-year-olds. John Pennell was fantastic in, I think he said his purpose was to make me safe. Rather than to make me fast, at least initially. And, definitely crashed a lot, as he sort of progressed me through. That's not a reflection on him. That maybe sounded like that, but a reflection on me. So he was sort of hugely instrumental in giving me some of those base skills. Meeting Dylan, Dylan and I, we're both in our second marriages, but he was a mountain biker, so that was coincidental but very fortuitous. And he was incredibly patient. He was also very much of the mindset that you always have the best bike that you possibly can. So I was always riding something that was, comfortable and working well and, had good equipment, rather than, as you might see in some relationships, where one person has a really good bike and one person has, the cheapie.
You just do a quick shout out to my spouse. We need to make sure I have the best bike I have. That's a good rule.
So, that was good. He took time to find the right trails, but so many people, all the way through. Oppy, I can remember a ride with you, and you probably don't remember this at all. No, not to throw you under the bus, but...
It wasn't when I pushed you off, was it?
No, but it was one, like John Russell did some rides, and I sort of wasn't one of his clients, but I joined in, and he again was, hugely supportive, and I think you were on one of them, and it was a longer one. This is going back quite some time. And you had a word to me about how fast I was pedalling and what gear I was in, and just gave me a little quiet word, and it made a huge difference. So, yeah,
thank you.
And everybody, I really had nobody that was negative or condescending. I just had people who were happy to see someone else getting into riding and gave me advice, gave me support, gave me encouragement, and that's been the story all the way through.
I have a distinct memory riding with you and Dylan and Chris McCormick up at Stanthorpe.
Oh, yes. Dylan and I were looking at each other going, we'll just let them go. That was fun.
Yeah, we went and explored some of the lesser-known fire roads, and I do remember being warned about this. Oh, there's this really tight corner at the bottom of this hill, and it was and Chris and I were like, oh, it sounds great, and it wasn't really what we were expecting, but we still managed to have lots of adventures going, hey, look at that rock. Do you reckon we can ride over that? And yeah.
I think you put out a message saying that you were coming up, and was there anyone interested? And from my own experience, when I first went there, I kept getting lost and I was a bit concerned, and remembered you from a few different rides and bits and pieces. So we volunteered to show you around, but really it was a case of us being several hundred metres behind you and going, go left at the end, or whatever it was, because there was no way we were keeping up, or I was keeping up with you guys. But it was very fun to watch, to watch you playing. And that's one of the things I do enjoy, is just watching people who've got those skills just play on a bike. I remember that ride too.
I think play is a great description of mountain biking. I think that that's one of the big differences from mountain biking to, say, road biking, is the playfulness.
Yes.
And that's a good memory.
What you say about the community, it's really heartwarming, and that's kind of what I saw, because there was a year there when you would have started that I was shooting events literally nearly every second weekend of the year. I did that many mountain bike events, and there was a crew that came from Toowoomba, like carpool down,
yes.
and Kate and Phil and the girls.
Well, Kate was incredible. They both were, but Kate was one of the ones who was really supportive.
Yeah, and they'd come down to Chicks in the Stick. Like, that's a big
Yes.
drive. They come down to Narang and everywhere. And I just, I wouldn't claim that I'm in as a rider, because I'm at the events, but I'm busy doing my thing. But the community did look like the way you described it,
Yep.
and always sort of has, and that's really heartwarming to hear. That's awesome.
Well,
it's a great community.
Chicks in the Sticks, Kate, Juliet Redding was another one, and Morgan Grimshaw were all in Toowoomba at the time. And not only did they help me with carpooling, because I didn't have a bike rack at that time, but they, I think Mountain Bike Coaching Brisbane was doing some sort of pre-coaching, and they drove me to all of those pre-coaching, let me know what was going on, and we made days of it. So, and they did that for several different things.
Yeah.
And now you are also one of those people that are in the community, part of the community, and supporting the next generation of riders as well.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're a coach, or should we, before we get into coaching, should we actually, we haven't finished talking about the Cape to Cape. So, prologue.
You call it
Cape Epic.
The Cape Epic, you call it the Cape to Cape.
Oh, sorry. So we've got the prologue's one of the 8.
Yes.
And that's a short sort of scene setter. So what happens after the prologue? What was stage 1 like? What were your impressions, or even at the prologue?
So the prologue was mind-blowing in that it is one of the short stages. It's around a winery. It's all in one place and in one location, so the crowds are massive, layers deep, and they're all cheering. You've got your name on your race plate, so they're cheering for you by name, and they're ringing cowbells and, encouraging you. And the noise was just the closest I'll ever get to feeling like I'm riding a World Cup, because it was mind-blowing. The scenery is stunning. You've got these beautiful open vistas. You've got Table Mountain in the background. Just phenomenal. And mostly single track, a little bit of what they call Jeep track, and some very short, narrow farm roads, but pretty well all single track. And as I say, that was just to get you, but to get you started, and then to work out your starting position. And then stage 1 is where they sort of, I guess, throw it at you to see if you're up to the challenge a bit. And so I think that was about 90 Ks and a couple of 2,500 metres of climbing. And 3/4 of that climbing is all in the second half. So I think by the time you get halfway through, you've done about 600 or 700 metres. I think it was 2,600. And then the rest is all in the second half. So that was a combination of single track, Jeep track, and again, a few little farm roads as connections. Then stage 2 is supposedly a shorter recovery stage, but this particular year on my Garmin, the temperatures reached 50 degrees and there was zero shade. It was sort of moving from one place to another place. So it was sort of riding through or traversing open farmland. So it became challenging in a different way. So that was, I think, from memory, about 4.5 hours.
Did you get cut short on that one, Emma?
No.
Because they did cut it short.
That was the next stage.
Is that stage 3, is that where you lost?
Stage 2 was where I lost Jeff.
Jeff's all right.
Yeah.
He just had to withdraw from the...
I didn't lose him. I left him in the very safe hands of the medical clinic because poor old Jeff, we discovered afterwards, had picked up a bit of a tummy bug, and that combined with those temperatures was he was one of many that really struggled on that day. And so he went and saw the medics. There are definitely plenty of medics out on course at sort of the different water points. And we had talked beforehand about what happens if something, means one of us can't go on, if we crash and we're injured or we're sick or what have you. And you've got an emergency transponder with you, and he took it out of his pocket and gave it to me and said, you're riding for 2 now. And so, it was hard to leave him, but obviously, lots of emotions there. But yes, we continued as a team 100% for the rest of the epic, but I rode alone. He and his wife supported me massively through the race off the bike and doing a lot of things to help, particularly after stage 3, which was the next stage. So that was, I think, initially meant to be about 90K, but they shortened it before we started to 78 because of the predicted temperatures. Again, very little shade. On my Garmin, the average temperature was in the mid-40s, and I think it reached 51 degrees. And the later riders, of which I was definitely one, we were sort of traversing around the edge of a basin. It was all sort of granite rocks and hillsides, very open, and the sun followed us the whole way. So again, the only shade was sort of crouching under a bush, in the little bit of shade under there. And I think I was out for 8.5 hours in total. My memories of that one are a little hazy. Started well, but there was a hold up, on the single tracks. So a lot of these stages in the past, the Epic has been known to have a lot of roads and more sort of open fire road type riding, whereas most of the stages this time were 95% single track. So there was a bit of a hold up. There's nothing you can do in that situation. It was about 40, 50 riders sort of trying to get through a section. Shrug my shoulders, then tried to make some time up.
I can't get over the heat. That's insane. Have you guys ever ridden in anything similar?
There was a 3+3 in December at Hidden Vale. So the Saturday started at midday.
Yeah.
And there were 50 plus temperatures on people's garments standing up, and
It's hard going.
there's some shade at Hidden Vale, but a lot of that sort of exposed rock and that kind of red clay, hard baked, it just sort of seems to almost reflect back at you. And the rocks get hot and sort of stay hot. And
sorry, dude.
Yeah, no.
but that
Hidden Vale's
was
very similar in like the feel of what it was like, I think.
And we've done some epics, some point-to-point epics back in the day where it was definitely in excess of 40 degrees and you're just on just exposed farm tracks. It's not a lot of fun.
I guess it brings up one of the critical parts of a stage race is the recovery, the rehydrating. I mean, a stage race has sometimes been described as an eating event.
Oh, hugely.
Because you have to fuel. So, which brings me to so do you have the stats on how many litres of infinite that you took during the thing? How many bags of powder? And
It's a nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I chose it especially. I certainly had a lot.
Enough to make customers worried that you were importing white powder?
Yeah, definitely. I think multiple bags went over. I aimed for a serve an hour, for every race, but I didn't always make it. I did find that as the race went on, for the longer stages, I did need, some food as well. And the aid stations are really well stocked with things like cheese sandwiches, Vegemite sandwiches. The food there was amazing. Boiled potatoes with salt, lollies and fruit and all those things. But Infinite was definitely the foundation that I could just keep sipping as I went through. By the end, normally Infinite's in my bottles, water in my backpack. I carried a 2-litre backpack as well. But we went from the heat in these stages to 20 degrees, cold, raining, riding in clouds in the latter stages, and I think the last couple were really muddy. So then after I looked at my bottles on the second last stage, Infinite went in the backpack and water went in the bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Sorry to cut you off where you were up to.
No, that's all right.
Just couldn't believe the heat.
Yeah.
That's just hard to imagine riding in that heat for so long. Which stage were you up to?
So stage 3. That was, that was tough. And you say about recovery, I think it took me 2 days to actually recover from that, but you're still riding in the meantime and just doing everything I could to rehydrate, refuel, recalibrate sort of electrolytes and all those sorts of things, because I was quite worried, about just making sure that I was ready for the next stage. Had a headache for, really probably 2 days afterwards. There were, sort of some quite, some people sort of badly affected by the heat and some quite significant crashes on that stage. And so it was quite sombering in some ways. And everyone was pretty mentally and physically drained. There was another lady who was also riding as what they call an individual finisher for stage 4, and she and I sort of rode together, which was really lovely on that stage, and just, I think, emotionally and mentally helped each other get back into the groove of enjoying what we were doing. And so that was really nice. So stage 4 was still quite warm, but back onto single track, some nice sort of steady climbs. Stage 5 was what they call the Queen stage. I think 98 Ks and 2,850 metres of climbing, which I actually thought I was quite nervous about, and ended up being one of my favourite stages, because the climbs were either long and steep but steady and rideable, or they were just so steep they were ridiculous and everybody just got off and walked. And when they get to that point, there's no debate. It's just, we're walking. So I really enjoyed that stage. I spent quite some time working on my switchbacks with Ride Technics, and there was
shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got to get it in there somehow, because it made such a difference. There was one stage, one part where I overtook about 20 people, not because I was faster than them, but just because I was riding the switchbacks well. So that was really quite lovely. So that was the Queen stage. And then stage 6 was what they called the bitch stage. So and
We can beep that out in post-production, can't we?
it was known
What kind of
quite
language is
locally.
this?
Is that our first?
Our first cuss word.
This is unbelievable.
Even the Airbnb hostess at Jeff and Rose's was saying, "Oh, you know what they call tomorrow's stage, don't you?" And I was just like, "Oh," but yes, and that was actually really hard. It was muddy. It was just hard. There was still a lot of climbing. I think it wasn't quite as long and quite as much climbing, but if you worked out the average ascent per 10 Ks, it was actually steeper than the Queen stage. And yeah, clay, tacky mud on a lot of the climbs meant that things that should have been rideable by the time 1,000 riders had gone through before me were not so rideable. Yeah, some of the descents were getting a bit treacherous by that stage. Some were fun, but there were a few towards the end that were just, well, again, think Hidden Vale after rain. That's what it was like.
But with 1,000 riders.
Yeah. Couldn't push the bike. You had to carry it because the wheels still wouldn't turn if you pushed, and the mud was over your shoes, just trying to sort of stomp your way through. And the big thing was, riding. You're not just riding to finish, but you're riding to beat the time cutoff. So there's a time cutoff for the whole stage, and you've got to be within that time. So whether it's 7 hours or whatever it might be. But every water point also has a cutoff, and that cutoff is a set time. So 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, or whatever. So being one of the later riders, because I'm slower, I actually had less time to get to those cutoffs, which irked me because I felt it was unfair, especially when I was getting tired and grumpy and the cutoffs were getting closer. But yeah, that one I found really draining. Didn't help that I was by that stage having cleat issues and pedal issues and couldn't unclip. So literally by the end of that stage, the only way I could get off my bike was by having a cleats crash and waiting for another rider to sort of extricate me, or grabbing onto a tree and, trying to get out. So that was quite mentally draining when you're going, here's a technical climb with rocks and it's wet and muddy. Will I or won't I make it? Because if I'm not going to make it, I'd rather crash here than there. So that was...
Did you expect it once you got past the Queen stage to be like, okay, I'm good at a certain point, or did you feel like it was always going to be, you just took it one at a time?
I didn't even take it one stage at a time. I took it one water point at a time, because every water point was a battle, and there were water points that I were on stage 3. The first water point I only made by 10 minutes. The second water point, which they then extended the cutoff for because of the heat, but I only made it by 6 minutes. And so every water point was, just worked to that one. And I wanted to know the distance. I wanted to know the time. I wanted to work out the average pace I had to hold. And I was just looking at that the whole time. That stage 6 that I was just talking about, I made the final end of the ride by less than 5 minutes, by 4 minutes, 45 seconds.
Well done.
And it was just... having to be
That's crazy.
So focused and just, people were saying, it's only 2 more stages. You've got this. And I was like, no, it's just, and breaking it down to the next 10 Ks, the next 5 Ks, and just, And then the last stage, which was meant to be 60 Ks and about 2,000 metres of climbing, but they had a big storm that night and literally it was unrideable. Some of the climbs that we had done the previous day after the storm, they had the 4-wheel drive out checking them. They had debris over them. The 4-wheel drive was in 4-wheel drive and sliding backwards down the hill.
Oh my God.
So they just had to accept that it was unsafe and unrideable, and they called in course builders or course designers early that morning and designed a whole new course. So they shortened it to 40 Ks and I think it was 1,100 metres of climbing. So they had to think on their feet that morning, but they made it happen.
What you've talked a lot about physically draining, mentally draining.
Hugely.
Lost your teammate, headache for 2 days, just making it to these water points. What did it feel like to get to that finish line? What was your emotions in the moment, and what have been your reflections upon it since then?
Yep. In the moment, relief more than anything. Huge emotions at the end of stage 6, because I actually got my times. I just got muddled in my head at the end of that one and thought I'd missed the cutoff by 15 seconds rather than being within the cutoff by just under 5 minutes, and sort of was trying to ride over and confirm, yes, I am in, but also, as I say, couldn't unclip. So I was literally holding on to people's shoulders and trying not to fall over at the time. So that was quite an emotional roller coaster, and that was... Stage 3 was really hard because of the heat, but emotionally stage 6 was my hardest. I was not looking forward to stage 7 and thinking this is going to be another stage 6 in those conditions and the mud and what have you. And then, as I say, when they changed it because of the extreme weather overnight, they had, high winds and a storm. I wasn't upset when they changed it, I'll put it that way. And that's when my mood lifted. And that was the first time that I thought, yep, I think I can do this. Every other time I'd held back from that thinking. I got quite emotional at the start of the stage because, again, by that stage, it's the last one. The crowds are big. Everybody's there. Like, the crowds were 3 or 4 rows deep. They have grandstands that were full of people. And I think it was Mike Finch was the announcer, and he was sort of saying about this is the last group. I was in the last slowest group going through, and he was saying to the, jeering the crowd up to get behind us, saying these are the guys that have been on the bike for 50 hours, this week. They've been, putting in the longer time, and, gave us a bit of a rap, and the crowd really did get behind us. And actually out on trail, there were supporters who were obviously there to see the pros, but a lot of people, locals, came to support the tail enders, who they knew were the battlers and fighting those cutoffs. And I actually got quite close to tears at the start. And then, we started, and I just sort of focused on the job. But that was really nice in that they shortened the stage, but the time cutoff stayed quite long, which meant that for the first time you knew that as long as nothing happened, you were going to make it. And that changed the atmosphere in the whole group, and there was a lot of camaraderie by that stage. We, as a group, we've sort of gone through together. We know each other's names fairly well by then. People are calling encouragement and just ticking those Ks off and seeing them go down, and then just the huge relief, and then the jubilation sort of came through. Jeff and Rose were there at the finish line. Other people were there sort of cheering that had finished earlier that I'd got to know. One of the big highlights was getting to know the other riders. And actually one of my highlights was, to just sort of backstep quickly, one of the things I did treat myself, and I recommend to anybody who does this, was a nightly massage. And ended up having the same, so they used students from the local college to do the massages, and I ended up having the same girl giving me a massage pretty well every night. So obviously she saw me after my highs and after my lows and my exhaustion and the nights that I'd talk and the nights that I just kind of lay there in a stupor. And she was actually giving out some of the not the medals, but some of the finishing bits at the end. And so seeing her and her excitement at seeing me finish was, also really, really lovely. But it was, and then sort of, got the medal. All I wanted was that damn medal.
Which you've brought with you. So we got some show and tell with Emma tonight.
But as soon as sort of you got through, you got the medal and the T-shirt, and then it was just all systems go to basically pack the bike and get on the bus back to the hotel.
Oppy's gonna hold this up like he's.
Watch this. I don't know whether it'll focus. No, it won't. Anyhow.
Just keep going back until it gets into some resemblance of focus. There you go. You can hold it up and smile at the camera.
So yes, I won't say it was all for this, but it was definitely nice to receive it.
Oh yeah, they're limited supply. They don't just give those away.
No, they don't.
What have been your reflections on it? Because it was a week ago now, 2 weeks ago now?
Nearly 2.
Nearly 2 weeks ago. Okay, so you're back to reality, back to work this week. You're back on the bike for fun.
Yep.
Back doing a coaching course this weekend. Okay. I'm sure you've had your moments
Yes.
since you crossed that line and all of the fanfare has died away and you've had a quiet moment by yourself. What are your thoughts?
My coach sent me a message saying that the epic will break you and then it will make you. And I think that pretty well sums it up, because there were times there when I was very broken and there was no way I was ever doing anything like that ever again. I suspect that I still won't ever be doing that again, but not because I don't want to. You know, if I was given it on a silver platter, I would now jump at the chance to do it again and to take my learnings from this one and hopefully do an even better job. I've come away with a really, I guess, an appreciation of... I'll step back. You asked earlier, why do we do endurance sports? And I think one of the big attractions is finding where your limits are and pushing them and expanding them. And this really expanded my limits. And so that's a perspective change, a worldview change, if you like, in terms of where I sit in endurance sport and what I can do. Again, slowly, but I've never done anything like this before, and to do it back to back to back to back has shown me that, you know, with the right fueling, with the right mindset, you know, the body can do amazing things. So from my own perspective, that's an internal change. But hearing the stories of the other riders and seeing what they were doing and the battles they were pushing, you know, we've talked about me doing this. There were 3 riders who only had one leg, you know, who were doing Cape Epic. And when you look at people, like, you know, who've got those sorts of
Extra challenges,
that's a good way to put it. And I think of some of those 20%, you know, clay climbs that we were going up and that they were having to navigate them. And they had footage of one bloke, and just, you know, the strength, the physical strength and the mental strength that must take to get up that, you know, and to finish, like, is just phenomenal. And so that's, I think, impacted me. But, you know, the stories of just ordinary people who've made this their goal and they've set aside and they've put time into the process to get there. It's pretty lovely.
It's an extraordinary thing.
Yes.
Like, I mean, did you learn things about yourself in those really tough times? You know,
Yes.
about.
I think so. And I think it came back to focusing on just getting through and not letting not being overwhelmed by in the moment, but by focusing on the outcome that you want and finding a way to get there. Like that really hot day, the last third, you know, like many, I struggled really badly with the heat. And you know, there were a couple of times when I just had to stop and I'd find that little bit of shade under a bush, but looking at my watch and saying, you've got 5 minutes, and then you go. But you need that 5 minutes to force myself to drink, because by that stage, everything you're drinking is also, you know, 40, 50 degrees. And that, you know, I've had cups of tea that are cooler than what I was drinking on that day. And you know, making myself, you know, have something extra to eat, to just get some salt in and what have you, and then going 5 minutes, rest and go. And, you know, you go slowly, but you keep going.
And you think you'll take those lessons into future events and pass them on to riders that you meet or coach or train?
I would definitely take them into future events. How much you pass them on, I don't know, because I don't know whether it has to be personal experience of knowing yourself that then you internalise it. But definitely if there's any sort of insights I can pass on, then yes. But I do think there's a whole thing of that lived experience and your own understanding of yourself and what works for you.
Do you feel you've come back changed?
Yes.
You've done an extraordinary thing. You really should reflect very positively on it.
You got admiration of the room.
Absolutely.
Well done.
You talk about taking up. I took up mountain biking as a kid, and it is orders of magnitude easier when you've got every afternoon after school and weekends of free time to learn, to fail, to try again. And the consequence of having a broken bone or injury is like, time off school, not time off work. So, look, it's an inspirational story, and it's been so good to hear it and to see the enthusiasm and, to see you plan, do and overcome. It's just amazing. And, thank you for sharing a lot of your story with us. Do you think that would you go back with Jeff if he asked you?
Yes. Yep. My biggest regret from the whole trip was that Jeff wasn't able to finish. And so if there was a way that we could wave a magic wand and make it happen so that, we could both go back and complete it together, that would be incredible.
I just have one question.
Just one?
Just one. One of many.
No, it's a very important question.
All right.
After talking about it breaking you, you say it broke you several times, but it mustn't have fully broken you. Is there, having known you for several years, is there a photo where you're not smiling on this race?
Yes. Yes, there are. And
does that's got to mean something because you are always smiling?
Yeah. There are some, particularly on that stage 6 and chasing those cutoffs, and they were so close. Mm-hmm. And it was just,
Is it because you didn't see the photographer? Or is it because you just couldn't bring a smile to your face?
Just, as you know, normally quite happy to smile at the photographer, sometimes to the point of nearly running them over. But it was just a case of, I've just got to get there, and just so focused on just making that cutoff and looking at the trail. And there were certainly other times when I was smiling, both when I was on the bike and when I was sort of pushing up the hill, and the photographer, of course, is sitting at the top of the steepest part, catching everybody who's not riding. But there are definitely some photos there where I was just not in a smiling mood.
Yep. Yep. Will they make the social media page, those ones?
I think they already have.
Awesome. Yep.
No, definitely showing all the moods.
Yeah. So this is the peak of your proudest moment mountain biking?
Yes. There have been different proud moments all along the way, but this is pretty big.
Yeah. Do you guys have a pinnacle moment looking back?
Like you say, there are different pinnacles at different times, and different wins, different successes. And we talked about it's not always a podium place. Some of the mentally toughest wins for me personally have been conquering technical features on a track. So it's not even a race or an event. I do remember hucking off enormous cliffs back in the day, and probably 2.5, 3 meter vertical drop with a gravelly, slippery run in and a steep run out, and literally being unable to stop using the brakes on the run in, and deciding finally to wrap all of my fingers around the bars and death grip it. And that was a huge high to pull it off. So there's racing wins. I mean, it was pretty cool to win the state champs a couple of months ago. That was fun. I think those personal successes like that almost are more memorable. Like I can relive that moment, and that was 25 years ago. I can still feel it.
What's your feel on that, Hubcap?
Hard to say. It's been Hundreds.
So many.
No, well, we talked about they're not always the wins. They're not always the longest event. It's not always the technical climb that you clear. I think some of those early epics were really hard. Didn't have the right equipment, didn't have the right nutrition, didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never ridden that distance before, and just gritting your teeth and just getting it done. And then struggling in other races, going, I wonder if I pushed harder in those earlier days sometimes, did just not knowing what you don't, there are unknown unknowns, and sometimes you got to hang on to those things. So I think if I ever stop mountain biking, things that I don't have any grandkids, tell the grandkids about this one, but yeah. Yeah, like you said, sometimes it's not the race wins. Like usually, if you win the race, you probably had the easiest day out. Everybody else has to suffer. So, but
sometimes race wins are a matter of how lucky you are and how unlucky other people are. It's not an independent event.
Correct. But I don't want to go delving into that. We're here to talk to. Well, I mean, you talked about the other people that were in this race with such admiration. You could see your face light up and your eyes light up, and the people that will watch this will see that. You're talking about just these amazing people that are just, they're just school teachers in their 50s that are out there that have just picked up a bike on a camp and gone and done this thing. And you're talking about yourself there. Have you taken a moment to look back and go, I am one of those people. I am one of the people going in this last group. I have been out there for 50 hours. I lost my teammate on day 3. I couldn't even walk 12 months before this event came on. I had to ride bike paths in flat pedals. And then when I went back to clip-ins, your health professional said that you're allowed to do a few things. And then I think they saw you did about 70 Ks the next day or something like that. So it's not as if your path to this event has been an easy one by any stretch. Have you given yourself a pat on the back after all of this?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah, I have. I think and certainly, it's easy to be self-depreciating and to recognise other people's achievements and what they do. But yes, definitely have taken, a few quiet moments to just go, the difference a year makes. And as I said, earlier in the podcast, just so grateful that Jeff said to me and had the faith in me, and I guess my personality and my approach, that we'd make it happen, because it has been a big year. So yeah.
Well, you should be very proud, and in fact, we're all very proud of you. You're repping South East Queensland on the world stage. It's a testament to your fortitude, and I think you should consider yourself a fully formed, rounded mountain biker. You're definitely.
This is where we pull out our own medal we've made. Here you go.
The perpetual trophy. We'll need that back for next week's episode, because we'll hand it on to the next person.
Let me get my engraver out. Well, yeah.
Your name did get mentioned as who should we get on as a guest. I think after the first episode, before you'd
straight away
even gone to Africa, we're like, who's got a great story to tell? Emma Reimer's got a great story to tell. She has come into this sport so late and has done...
Not so late.
We'll edit that out.
But not just that. Also, when you spoke about these, really kind people who were there and supporting you in the early days, I think you're also one of those people as well, because you're one of the nicest people in the community, and you're also now coaching, correct? You are in that role, and you're a great role model and an inspiration now.
Thank you.
Absolutely, always have been. But do you want to talk a little bit about the enjoyment you get out of sharing your skills and that sort of thing with younger people?
Yeah, definitely. And the coaching has gone in sort of ebbs and flows. Going back sort of probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I was doing more, and I've sort of gone back a little bit more to more teaching and less coaching at the moment, but really, really enjoy the coaching and seeing the kids improve. I've sort of often done the coaching with the younger kids, and then they go to the faster coaches as they get older and more experienced. But seeing the youngsters not only grow in their skills, but to grow in their confidence, these are kids that, it affects every aspect of their personality once they start getting out in the bush, in nature, doing things that they thought were really scary and then realising they can. All the things that I feel they're feeling too. And so my coaching started thanks to John Pennell. When I moved to Stanthorpe, the school I was at, I started running a mountain bike club on a Friday afternoon. They were just putting in the Mount Marley trails. And for the listeners who perhaps haven't ridden Mount Marley trails, they're sort of rocky granite trails that some people describe as a mini derby. They're in the centre of town or very close to the centre of town. And there were kids who had never been on a mountain bike, parents who'd never been mountain bikers, but they were sort of getting bikes from the local tip shop. Parents were dropping them off at the top and hopefully picking them up at the bottom. And I thought, well, I don't know, much, and particularly then, but I know a few basic things like cover your brakes, keep your pedals level and shift your weight like this. And that will hopefully increase the odds of them being picked up at the bottom in one piece. And so, John Pennell really encouraged me to go and get my, what was then the level 0, which I did and started coaching there. When he moved to Brisbane, I was getting coaching with Dylan Cooper sort of sometime later, and he was looking at getting more coaches. So I would come to Brisbane one day a week from Stanthorpe. I'd get a lesson with him in the morning and I'd coach in the afternoon. And when we moved to Brisbane, I sort of ended up doing, probably 3 or 4 afternoons a week and some weekend coaching. And as we sort of mentioned at the beginning, also running courses for us cycling to put coaches through the course, which has been really rewarding, and hearing their stories and people giving back to coaching, whether they're looking to do it as a business and to progress it, or whether they are parents looking to help out at things like Cootha Kids, and sort of give back to the sport in that way.
Shout out to the people, paid and unpaid, who are out there teaching and sharing knowledge and giving the experience to those kids, like you said. And I love that. The getting out there in nature, it's kind of has this calming effect, overcoming an obstacle and just building their confidence and skills. It's awesome. I love it. Any other questions for Emma while we've got her? We don't want to let her go.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Best wine. So we talked about the Cape Epic, but we haven't talked about the week of wine, the wine epic.
There are some great wines. The winery names escape me, but my favourite...
Come for the race, stay for the wine.
Oh, look, thoroughly recommended. Best recovery week ever. Being taken around the Western Cape and some of the wineries there was fantastic. And definitely I think my favourite wine tasting was 3 wines and 3 handmade chocolates by the local chocolatier who had matched them to the wines. That was quite special. So I do actually have those 3 wines and those 3 chocolates. So Dylan and I can replicate that tasting at home.
That sounds like a wonderful souvenir memory of a fantastic event and a fantastic time.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's just been really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. What's on your calendar, by the way? What events have you got penciled in?
Well, I'm going from extremes of heat to potentially extremes of cold and looking at Devil's Cardigan in 5 or 6 weeks. So that's the next big goal to keep me moving.
Explain that one for
that's
people like me who don't know what you're talking about.
Gravel race in Tasmania.
Mm-hmm.
I think 100, 120k, and I can't remember how much climbing.
It's got some climbing though.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Enough climbing.
It has been gravel nationals, but it's not.
It's not this year.
It's not this year.
I
think they're trying to get. Are they trying to get UCI status?
I think
for that one
may be a qualifier for the Gravel Worlds.
I think that one and the 7 over in WA.
Yeah.
I think it climbs the infamous Jacob's Ladder climb up. Is it just? No, don't know it. Anyhow, down the road from Mount Wellington, it's switchbacks up steep cliffs It's
All
quite
right.
epic.
So may look at my gearing before that one.
Always.
You can enter the single speed.
No. Definitely not.
One gear, many speeds.
Yeah. So when's that one?
May 10th.
Okay, cool.
So that's the next goal to keep me focused.
That's the weekend after. What's the one down in northern New South Wales? The 100. Oh, Convict.
The Convict 100.
Convict's just popped up. Oh, should get down to that. Oppy and I both doing Brisbane-Roubaix.
Yeah, Elsie is out there. This
comes
might
up
air,
then.
this will be airing post-Roubaix, I imagine.
Yeah.
So it was a great event, wasn't it? I think everyone should get there in 2026 because 2025
I
is a
assume it's
cracker.
going to be amazing. Last year was incredible. Shout out to Cam Taylor for getting this event.
And is this only the second year it's run?
Yeah.
Second
nice.
year. So the Brisbane Roubaix is our tribute to the Paris Roubaix, which will be on not this weekend, but next weekend. And I will be staying up to watch that. The Pog versus the Pole. Pog versus Van der Poel. So, can't wait to see that matchup.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a watch party. Watch party. we should mic up and commentate
No.
the coverage. No, all right.
They already have highly qualified commentators that actually already do that.
Commentate their commentary. Anyway,
I just wanted to say one more thing. You didn't miss the rain down in Africa. I think I sent you the
Isn't
the
it
Toto
bless?
song
Bless the
before
rain
you
down?
went. Did you bless the rain down in Africa?
We certainly got the rain, yes.
Oh, yeah. That's my only sort of Africa-related gag this episode. We can edit that out later.
staying
It
in.
wouldn't be the same podcast if it didn't have at least one of your gags in there.
Well, thank you again so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's
you.
been an absolute pleasure. And everyone at home, stay tuned for next episode and more wonderful special guests just like Emma. Thank you for your passion. And until next time, thanks, guys.
Ciao.
See ya.
Bye-bye.